So, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about collective action, which is a key part of policymaking, as these images suggest. Here we see poor mothers from East Los Angeles marching, trying to prevent a prison moving into their neighborhood. Here we see a rich people's movement fighting taxes. And here's a group advocating a public good, asteroid defense. So let's take a closer look at collective action and the so-called collective action problem. Now, in the last lecture, I introduced the idea of judo politics. You remember the boxes with the swoopy arrows, right? A group's key move in judo politics are getting organized, then taking collective action. When organized, the group can participate effectively in politics, or at least much more effectively than when unorganized. Well, how obvious. But if the need for organization is so obvious, why do so many potential groups fail to become organized? If participation in politics is so important, why do so many organized groups take so little action? In contrast, why are other groups well organized and buzzing with action? What's the secret of their success? In particular, what tactics can group leaders use to create sustained high levels of political action? These questions deal with what social scientists call the collective action problem. First, let's define what we mean by collective action. Action taken by a group of people or firms or organizations, countries, or other entities in pursuit of a common goal. As I've emphasized, collective action in pursuit of a political goal can be extremely valuable. It can change the policies of governments, or the behavior of firms, and the lives of people. So, what is the collective action problem? If a group of people, or firms, or organizations agree on a common goal, shouldn't they just naturally take action together? Surprisingly, perhaps, the answer is often no. Here's a definition of the classic collective action problem: a situation in which several actors have a common goal that would justify acting together collectively, but the individual actors face incentives that undermine their effort, particularly in tandem with others. Now, in such a situation, collective action often fails. The essence of this outcome is captured in the phrase, rational individuals, irrational society. Let's look at an example, because the first time you encounter the idea of a collective action problem, it can be rather mind-boggling. For most people, it just seems natural to believe that if a group has a common interest, the members of the group will act on it. Grasping the collective action problem is easier, I think, if you work through a concrete example. Let's look at a real one: the mothers of East Los Angeles. So, Maria Cisneros is a poor Mexican-American woman living in a depressed area of Los Angeles, the neighborhood called East Los Angeles. Due to overcrowding in California's prisons, the state legislature has directed the California Corrections Department to build a new prison in Los Angeles County, and the Corrections Department has picked East Los Angeles as the location. Maria thinks this is a terrible idea. To the outsiders who zoom past on LA's freeways, East Los Angeles looks like a bleak and blighted wasteland. But Maria knows differently. To her, East LA is no wasteland. It's a vibrant neighborhood. This is where her friends live, where her kids go to school with their friends, where she knows the shopkeepers and they know her, and where she goes to church. She's afraid the prison will really hurt the neighborhood. The prison will bring in lots of sleazy characters, like bail bondsmen. It'll generate almost no jobs for the people who live nearby, and she's afraid escaped criminals from the prison might endanger her children. East Los Angeles has already had more than its share of halfway houses, drug treatment centers, community mental health centers, and the like, which never seem to go into rich neighborhoods. Enough is enough, she thinks. Maria knows most of her neighbors feel exactly the way she does, because everyone at the Church of the Resurrection, the local Catholic church, is talking about the prison. They're worried too, and some are pretty angry. Maria's heard from her friend Lucy that some local businessmen are trying to organize a protest to be held at the proposed site for the prison. But Maria can't make up her mind whether she should go. She calls her close friend Lucy on the phone. "Are you going? I can't decide." Lucy's unsure too. They talk for a few minutes. Then Maria has an idea. "Let's make a list of the reasons to go and a list of the reasons to stay home. Then we can see what to do." Lucy agrees, and they start coming up with the two lists. So, what's on the two lists? If you were Maria or Lucy, what would you put on the lists? Think about it for a minute, then let's walk through it together. Okay, let's try the reasons to go list first. Number one on the list is surely the prison is bad, so let's try to stop it. Okay, what else is on the go list? Maybe some of our friends will be there and it would be nice to see them. How about the stay at home list? There'll be some reasons like, I need to be at home for my kids, or I can't take off time from work. In other words, there are substantial opportunity costs to going. Another one might be, it's pretty hard to get there. The bus doesn't run very often. Maria also has this concern. I've never been to a demonstration. I don't know what to do. Then she thinks, who knows who'll show up? There might be troublemakers and it could get dangerous. In other words, there are real costs and uncertainties to participating. Taken together, these reasons boil down to, it's pretty costly for Maria and Lucy to participate. But how about this one? Whether we show up or not, it won't make any difference. The government's probably made up its mind already. Suppose Lucy makes this argument. Maria might respond with this counter-argument. If enough people show up, the protests will make it onto TV. Then it might make some difference. So we should go. Lucy, that's pretty hard-headed, might answer back, if enough people show up to make it on TV, what are two more people? No one will even notice us. Our showing up just won't make any difference. Maria might then respond with a different kind of argument. Well, whether it makes a difference or not, it's the right thing to do. Okay, with a list like that, what do you think Maria and Lucy do? Maybe their anger at the prison is enough to get them out the door, despite all the other reasons, a situation we'll discuss shortly. But taken all in all, it might not be surprising to see the two of them stay home, despite their desire to stop the prison. Now, multiply that conversation across the whole neighborhood. How many people show up to the protest? This kind of situation is very general. It arises when group members consider a political good, like a good public policy. The group members may be individuals like Maria and Lucy, but also firms or nonprofit agencies in a coalition, or even nations, like think about global warming. Each would benefit, or potentially benefit, if they all engage in some activity supporting the policy change, perhaps protesting, but also lobbying, contributing, canvassing, voting, writing, telephoning, learning information, advertising, staging media events, boycotting, so on. But the incentives facing them as individuals, especially when they take into account the actions of others, lead the group members to undersupply the activities. As a result, there's too little good public policy from the group members' perspective. Similarly, consider actions opposing what many citizens would see as clear political bads. Rent-seeking policies that hurt the public, useless pork barrel projects, special interest tax loopholes, political pandering, deficit spending when the economy is doing well. Actions opposing those bad policies are also undertaken too little. Think back to client politics and the interest group matrix. Here, the undersupplied actions include becoming informed, monitoring politicians, studying proposed bills, and then protesting, lobbying, contributing, voting, and so on. As a result of inaction by citizens, there's too much bad public policy. So, the collective action problem has been the subject of enormous scholarly attention across the social sciences, particularly since the 1965 publication of Mansur Olson's breakthrough book, The Logic of Collective Action. In fact, we've learned an enormous amount about collective action since Olson. We now know that there are many kinds of collective action problems, not just one. We've discovered concepts unknown 50 years ago. For example, we've learned how to see collective action as a so-called aggregative game, in which what happens to an individual participant depends not only on her own action, but on the aggregated actions of all the participants. We've worked out how the ideas of strategic substitutes and strategic complements allow us to analyze the logics, not logic, of collective action and aggregative games. Collective action has also been the study of practical reformers. They've understood very well that getting organized and taking action are vital in politics. So, for example, the left-wing community organizer Saul Alinsky wrote a how-to book, his famous Rules for Radicals, a practical primer for realistic radicals, from 1971, summing up what he had learned from many years of personal observation and experience. Alinsky's little handbook continues to guide group organizers, including some in movements that would have dismayed him, such as the conservative Tea Party movement. In my opinion, our new understanding of the logics of collective action is good enough so that we can return to how-to books like Rules for Radicals and ask, how much of that really stands up? Or rather, what practical advice can activists and leaders glean from the new scholarship on collective action? So I'll offer some rules for reformers rather than rules for radicals. Theory and case studies suggest that leaders can use these rules to achieve a high degree of effective collective action. And later lectures will link this analysis with broader strategic questions, particularly what message to send via collective action and who to target with collective action. Let me lay out the organization of this lecture and look ahead to the next. In this lecture, we're going to really dig into the classic analysis of collective action. By the end of this lecture, you should understand the standard analysis very well. First, we'll start with a standard taxonomy that distinguishes four particular kinds of goods. Particularly important for us are pure public goods. Then, using asteroid defense and the East LA prison as running examples, we'll scrutinize three phenomena that constitute the core of the traditional understanding of collective action. First, free riding and easy riding. Second, the size principle. And third, the exploitation of the mighty by the meek. I'll introduce a key concept, strategic substitutes, and show you how to use it. We'll then look at several ways to overcome the classic free riding problem. I'll extract 6 lessons for leadership from the classic approach. These are practical takeaways for people who want to be leaders. The traditional place to start is the distinction between private goods and public goods. So let's do that.